I don't like him very much, but he was a near great president. Sam Rayburn said, you know, he got all the little things wrong and he got all the big things right. And stop and think of what he was faced with. He was vice president for 82 days. FDR never told him anything, didn't know about the atomic bomb. He becomes president, and almost overnight, one crisis after another. Think of the decisions that confronted the so-called little man from Missouri. All of a sudden, our great wartime ally, the Soviet Union, we were locked in a Cold War with the Soviet Union. The United Nations had to be chartered and given life. This was part of FDR's legacy. He had to deal with Uncle Joe Stalin, first at Potsdam, and then, you know, as the relationship deteriorated, he had to devise a policy to deal with this. Well, it was communist containment. And what did that mean? The Truman Doctrine in 1947, aid to Greece and Turkey. 3 months later, the Marshall Plan, then NATO. One instrument after another after another. Harry Truman is the most modest of modern presidents. He didn't go to college. And yet Harry Truman is also the architect of the national security state. And I don't say that critically, I just say it's a fascinating paradox. I think he's become a folk hero for many reasons, and I think for many understandable reasons. He was authentic. But you know what? He wouldn't get elected dog catcher today. If you read the letter he sent to the Washington Post music critic about Margaret singing, you know, in this political climate, you know, Fox News would be going, lathering at the mouth, and there'd be impeachment resolutions and, you know, demands that the president apologize, and, you know, and that was just one incident. But I think today we live in such an artificial political culture. It's so phony. It's so formulaic. It's so scripted. It's so lacking in spontaneity that Harry Truman enjoys a reputation perhaps larger than he deserves. But more power to him. He, when he left office in 1953, he went back to Independence, to the only home he never owned. It was his mother-in-law's house. And the mayor said, well, Mr. President, what was the first thing you did after you crossed the threshold? He said, I took the grips up to the attic. That's Harry Truman. But you have to, see, I'm my bias, just so you know, I'm Tom Dewey's biographer. So, you know, he might have been that other Michigan, you know, president, if only the electorate had been a little wiser in 1948. Yeah.
What do you think is the best biography of FDR?
The Wall Street Journal asked me earlier this year to list the 5 best biographies of FDR. Conrad Black, who's probably a crook and probably going to jail, but he wrote a great book about FDR. We probably want to cut that from the, I don't want to, I have enough friends in Illinois without being summoned to his trial. I could be a non-character witness. Anyway, and the book he wrote, it's this thick, but it's wonderful, particularly coming from a conservative viewpoint. Because he refutes a lot of the old canards about FDR being taken in by Stalin and lying us into Pearl Harbor and so forth and so on. I think actually, if you want the best one-volume biography of FDR, is called FDR by a man named Ted Morgan. It was published in 1982 for the Roosevelt Centenary. Ted Morgan, interestingly enough, was born in France. He's a naturalized American, and he has an extraordinary feel for the American political culture and for the complexity and elusiveness of Roosevelt. Roosevelt was like a many-layered cake. And I think Reagan was much the same. I don't think Reagan was as simple as either his admirers or his detractors wanted to believe. I think he's a very complex figure. I don't think anyone in the White House, in the history of the White House, has been as complicated as Franklin Roosevelt, which is one reason why he's fascinating to read about. It's a mystery. Two more. One right there. Yep, you.
Given your comments earlier about the plasticization of the current administration, what is your hope for future great presidents and having any fun?
Having any fun?
Being great or having fun, or perhaps both?
That's a conundrum. And the reason is because being great generally means rising to the occasion in times of crisis. In times of crisis are not much fun. There are presidents, obviously, in the past. Lincoln, in the greatest of crisis, in the most dire of circumstances, to the horror of his cabinet, told smutty jokes. And he said, I must laugh or else I would die. I think a sense of humor, putting aside fun, which people will identify or differently. Harry Truman said that a backbone is necessary to be president, but so is a funny bone. And that a man who didn't have a sense of humor would go insane in the office. And it's true, if you look at the most humorless presidents, they do tend to be at the bottom of the barrel in terms of academic listings. Look at the people at the top. Lincoln, Roosevelt. Washington wasn't exactly a laugh riot, but he had redeeming qualities. No, I think a sense of humor, again, is a sense of proportion. And that is what you need desperately to deal with any pressure situation, but particularly, I don't think we'll see another Teddy Roosevelt, probably in our time. I think he was utterly unique. But it would be nice to see someone who simply enjoyed the office, who enjoyed being president. I think that's one reason why, for all the tabloid revelations that have come our way, I don't think it's just misplaced nostalgia that has John F. Kennedy still with a kind of halo, because I think people look at the Kennedys and they see this radiant, vital, life-affirming couple who took joy in life and shared some of that with the rest of us. I think that was very real. And I think for all the cynicism that is attached to JFK in recent years, I don't think we should ever lose sight of that. One last question.